Welcome to another episode of Rim Shots with Sean right here in the Rock Rage Radio Network. I almost forgot how to say that. I've only done 7 of these this week, and you would think I would have it in my head, but I have Jordan Khalaf. But you're living where?
I am in New York.
New York, beautiful, and I'm in Nova Scotia. We're an hour away from each other. Thank you, welcome. Thank you for doing this.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about what's been going on with you, Jordan. Gina's been talking you up quite a bit. She is a PR dynamo, as you know, as I know.
Very aware.
Yeah. Give us the what.
Yeah, so I think I just dropped my newest EP like a month ago, about a month ago. So just kind of making the circuit, promoting that. We dropped two singles kind of over the course of the year prior off that EP, and so yeah, just doing the circuits now with this one.
So I guess a waterfall release of sorts, right?
Yeah.
Which seems to be the way to do it in this day and age. People's attention spans being brutally brutally absent these days, right? Did you find that that was a successful endeavor for you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just kind of like feeling it out. When does it feel right to release something? I don't really try to, I don't, I don't necessarily go into it with like this crazy elaborate plan behind it. I just kind of release it when it feels right.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, the problem for me is that I'm writing faster than I release music, so it's like I can never keep up with my like writing in general. So
Not a bad problem to have though, because I've been in bands, I've worked with artists who they never seem to have enough. And you're always on them to get more. So that to write faster than what you're releasing, and I guess actually you get to put the best of the best of what you're
yeah.
doing out there.
Yeah, I mean, and I think for me too, like I'm very much a perfectionist. It's been a learning process of just like learning when is it okay to like let it go and when is it okay to release. Because I always I'm like, well, we could fix this and we could do this and we can do this. And so it's still that learning process of like, when is it done?
Right. Um,
Um,
well, my producer Jason, he has a band with a friend of his, and his friend does a lot of the production. He's the same way. And Jason and I laugh about it because Sean will take forever to put something out. Always sounds brilliant once it finally does come out. But sometimes it feels like it might be like the gestation period of an elephant, if you know what I mean.
yeah, I definitely have benefited because working with Chuck Alkazian, who co-produced this with me at Pearl Sound Studios, he's a genius and just he has just so much experience. He does a good job of like, we'll do a take or something. I'm like, well, we could fix this or we could fix this. And he's like, it's good. This is good. We don't need to like you do too much and then you actually start going backwards, I think. And so it's finding that balance.
No, I agree, and I've often talked to people about when they produce their own material and then they want to master it, and I think that's almost too much because you're so close to it, you
Yeah.
don't have a an objective kind of listening point.
Yeah, I think too, like I think that goes for the writing process even sometimes. Like obviously like I play a ton of different instruments. Like I could in theory sit and write the whole thing, record every single bit and piece of it, but like at a certain point I do sometimes hire a guitarist or have so and so play on it just because they're going to have a different interpretation of the song and just they'll hear it and have something that maybe I'm not thinking because I'm so in it that I start to things start to bleed over a little bit.
It's interesting you mentioned that because I'm a drummer. I
Hmm.
do record for people, and I had the opportunity to do a country song this year for an artist. My interpretation of what I was hearing actually totally changed the vibe of the song, which they really liked, but they weren't hearing it that way. And so I like what you're saying there because sometimes fresh ears can make fresh music.
Yeah, I mean, there's a balance. Like, I'm going to hear I'm like, I like your take. It's not what I want for the song though. It's not we talk about that all the time. I teach music. I teach at a school of rock as well. And I love doing it because I get to arrange like for the group classes when we put the kids in groups or adults in groups or whatever. We get to learn just tons of different music and how that kind of influences. But we talk a lot about I'll talk with drum teachers like the Drumeo thing
Yeah, yeah.
where they'll have like so and so play this song that's a completely different genre, and like their take is so different from what the actual thing is. And that's it's a really fascinating thing, just like, how two people can hear the exact same thing and come up with something completely different from each other.
That to me, though, and it's taken me, I guess, a long time to land on that. That to me is the beauty of music, right? And my opinion is what you like might not be what I like, but we're not wrong. It's
Right.
what we like. And I don't think there's any right and wrong in music. And certainly there's been a number of artists over the years that have proven that, theory's great, but you don't necessarily have to have it and vice versa. Um, so I like what you're saying, especially for young artists, because I think when I was coming up, it was literally if you didn't do it a certain way, you were wrong. And I
Yeah.
don't think there's any right and wrong in music.
No, I mean, I think that's like across the board. One of my favorite things I read was looking at like the Silk Sonic album that came out a few years ago, Bruno Mars, Anderson .Paak. And like looking at that album, and obviously both of them are phenomenal drummers, and there's like five or six different drummers who played on that album
Right.
because they just wanted who fit the song the best. And it's that like egoless writing that I really appreciate, and I strive to take the ego out of like when I'm writing music, producing music, like, and just do what is best for the song, what makes the song kind of what it is. And people are going to listen to that and interpret it however they want to interpret it, however they like. I don't like necessarily sitting here going, this song is about this thing because it's not that simple.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to hear it differently and like feel it differently. And I think that is such a gorgeous thing about music.
No, I
Um,
agree. I agree with you. I don't like to do this, but I often find with my viewers and my listeners, it's helpful. Um, so if I was to say to you, for the benefit of them, um, if you were doing a comparable on your music, who's out there, maybe it's a an older musician, maybe it's a newer thing. What would you sound like? Who are you?
I think this album, so I think like I'm all over the place. I kind of write all over the place. I write tons of different songs that I try to be fairly genreless. I think influence wise, like Rob Thomas, Matchbox 20, I grew up loving that stuff. So like that late 90s, early 2000s kind of thing. Rob Thomas, like John Resnick, Goo Goo Dolls. I think this album has a lot of songs on there that's like you can tell that kind of influence there. Alanis Morissette, and then you've got also just like the Green Day, Paramore, like pop punk vibe as well, that I grew up really liking. Foo Fighters, um, kind of all over the place. There's
Yeah,
like things we've done where, I think there's certain ways that we did the guitars that are very reminiscent of like Def Leppard like production style, with just like guitar layering with
yeah.
tons of different guitars. So it's kind of all over the place.
Um,
Um, but yeah, I would say like those artists.
well, and I won't pick on a genre. I won't even mention a genre, but there are certain genres that we all know that they sit down and they go, okay, we're going to write this song today because we need a hit today. And we don't need to pick on those, but we know who they are. You sounds to me like you're not doing that. You're just, well, what is your process? Do you pick up an instrument and you have a thought? Like how do you do it?
It's pretty variable. I tend to say I try to let songs write themselves. So sometimes like I have some songs I write it in like 10 minutes.
Mhm.
And I can if I really need to, I can sit down and write, you know, a whatever song that's catchy and something like that pretty quickly. You write a lot, you have to write a lot. I think that's a misconception with people is that they think like, oh, you want to be a songwriter, you just kind of sit down, you write songs, and then like I write a lot of bad songs.
Yeah, yeah.
I've written a ton of bad songs. Like it is work in that sense of like writing a lot. To the point now where like, yeah, I can sit down, I can write something pretty quick that's like good. Um, but for me, like the best songs, it's a lot of writing and rewriting and stuff like that.
But you have to
But
you have
in
to
terms of process, I don't sit down like saying I sit down and say I'm gonna write something. I might give myself a parameter or an exercise or something to kind of get my brain going into some direction.
sure.
So like recently one of my like exercises to get myself out is I'll just pick like any artist And it could be absolutely anything. It could be Foo Fighters, it could be Taylor Swift.
Mm.
And I will sit down and go, I'm going to write a song that that artist might have written and still keep it wholly originally me and everything I kind of do. I have kind of my certain things that I think I gravitate towards. But I'm going to write a song just to kind of get my brain going, like, what are the elements of a song that make it sound like this artist? And finding those things and like, okay, what boxes do they kind of check? And then go from there. I try to just, and then sometimes, yeah, I sit down like, ooh, I have an idea. I might be in the middle of doing something and it's like, ooh, lyric idea. I just write it in my phone or something. And so it's not like a strict process by any
Sure.
means.
I have friends who write and they're like, "Oh, I've got to write 2 songs a day," and it's like, okay, well, and I guess it's to me, it's not like playing drums where you do rudiments or double kick patterns or where you're working on something. That's just my opinion. I don't know if it helps. I don't know if it harms. I don't know what it does, but I mean, some people have that sort of idea where they have to write a couple of songs a day to feel like they're creating.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it is all that different though. Like, yeah, you're doing drums, you're doing rudimental stuff, Hey, I'm gonna sit and work on a paradiddle exercise, and I'm gonna work it around the drum kit, and I'm gonna take this beat and I'm gonna work within that. I think it's the same with writing. Like, writing exercises exist. Like, I want to get better at a certain style of rhyme scheme or writing in a certain genre, because there are like, especially lyric writing, I think.
Were
But
you-
also like as I improve on guitar sometimes or improve on any instrument, sometimes I learn this cool new thing or cool new trick and I'm like, I'm gonna incorporate that into something I write. Like it can be as simple as that. I think finding like limits because it's kind of a whole open box, right? You can do whatever you want.
right.
And so giving yourself a box to kind of stay in and say, I'm gonna write and here are my parameters kind of helps you keep it a little more concise and like manageable in that
Um,
sense.
And you were mentioning the drum references there. I was going to ask you if you were eavesdropping or listening in on my practice session today because it was eerily similar to what I did. So that's kind of fun. So you mentioned you're in New York,
Yes.
like NYC.
I live just north of the city, but yeah,
Okay. So I talk about this a lot because I grew up predominantly listening to a lot of music based out of Los Angeles and a lot of session players out of there and that type of thing. There's a vibe in New York. And I always, anybody that's there, I always like to ask them their impression of the vibe because it's a little more maybe artsy. It's a little more, um, well, you give me
well,
your
so
impression.
I'm originally from Michigan.
Okay.
I only moved out here maybe a year and a half ago. But yeah, I mean it's artsy. I have a musical theater background. I studied theater in college and then music composition at the University of Michigan.
Hmm.
So definitely like the artsy theme. I think there's definitely like, even listening to some of my music, there's that musical theater influences there as well. So I love that. I have a lot of friends who are in like super involved on Broadway and doing stuff in pits and stuff like that. Brooklyn has like a really like underground, like huge punk scene and then just like underground kind of rock scene, but it's definitely different than in Michigan, like the Michigan music scene for sure.
You hit on something that I wanna tackle here quickly because music today to me, and in particular, you see it in like some of the bars and stuff like that.
Mhm.
It doesn't really seem to have an identity, right? Like you go out, and it's just somebody's up on stage and they're playing. They're maybe wearing a ball hat, maybe they're wearing. You mentioned musical theater, which to me, you can see. I mean, Kiss is one of my biggest influences. So that theatrical kind of
Yeah.
show, like so, it's music, but it's also a show where it's for the eyes, for the ears, for everything. What's your take on that? Where do you how do you see music? Do you think that that's taking place as I guess as predominantly as it should, or it needs to maybe get a boot in the arse a little bit more?
I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting thing. I talk about like I think part of that is just the merging of genre and kind of this idea of genreless music. I
Right,
think this happens like music is fairly cyclical in nature, right? You look at like the 80s and then as the end of the 80s kind of happen, you get like this big merge of kind of like everything coming together, synth pop and hair metal and all this stuff, but everything kind of starts to merge together and it's a little unclear what anything is.
right.
And then like Seattle grunge kind of comes out and just like explodes music again, right?
Yeah,
So I think there's a sense of that. I think you see a lot of the theatrical stuff in like, you know, big stage shows, obviously like arena shows. It's hard in a smaller setting, right? It's expensive to put on like a theatrical show.
no, it is.
Um, I think the underground like rock type scene, it's definitely more that like grungy kind of like, you know,
Well, it's like a friend of mine
is what
says,
it is.
just put on a nice shirt. Like, at
Yeah, I
least do
mean,
that, right?
I mean the for me personally, like good music is good music.
Yeah, yeah.
Like if what you're writing is good and your energy is good, then it's gonna be good. Like you don't have to try that hard. It starts to become just like a natural thing, I think.
I think people see through. Uh, I don't want to say gimmicks because I don't believe people see through gimmicks, but I think they see through fake. I think they see
Yeah.
through.
I think authenticity
Yeah,
is
you're right.
super important in
You're
music.
right.
Yeah.
Because we won't again dump on any genres, but when you have an artist that's clearly one thing that moves over to another thing in an effort to get votes or win hearts and minds, I mean it's very obvious, and then it's up to the public to decide whether they like it or not.
Look at a band like Green Day. Green Day
Yeah,
has done the same thing for what, 30 years?
yeah.
Like 30 years, and they're still relevant. Like, but I mean, I have a lot of respect for artists that can shift genre and kind of, but yeah, I think authenticity, I think with like the rise of, social media and stuff like that too, like it's that double-edged sword of like music is not an exclusive club, nor should it ever be,
Yeah.
but it is increasingly easy to get music out.
Yeah.
I think
So
it's increasingly easy to release music. I don't think it's increasingly easy to release good music.
you're right, and I had this conversation today, and it centered around some people that had New Year's Eve gigs who were getting canceled at the last minute. And the comment was made, it's too easy of a business to get into now because the person that really isn't a professional but sounds good can pick up an instrument and go play for nothing. And so that in a couple of instances that's what happened.
Yeah, I think what I kind of mean is just like, at least from like the studio end of things and releasing music is
Right.
just, it's very easy to just put a song out on Spotify or something like that, right?
It is.
And circulate it, right? If you're good at social media and you're good at that element of it, even if the song's not good, it's gonna do great, right?
Yep.
I make this joke a lot, and like I think she's a phenomenal writer. But like take someone like Taylor Swift. Obviously, she's like rules the music industry right now, rules the music business. And she's a phenomenal like business, phenomenal at that end. I make the joke that like she could release an album of her breathing and it would chart number one.
Uh, well, and I mean,
And she's a different case because she is huge.
yeah,
But if you're good at the social media and you're good at the business end of it, like, yeah, that's something that's really hard. I'm not good at that. I don't like it. I don't find enjoyment in it because I find it really inauthentic for me
yeah,
personally. And as someone too who's like more of a writer than anything, I really would love to like ghostwrite for people, help people, produce people and stuff like that. That's more my scene
yeah.
personally. But I think with just like the increase of like TikTok and stuff like that, where it's very easy to get music out there, but now you have to dig through all of it to find like really good um people that you actually like and really people that you connect with.
It's a
Like especially underground stuff.
it's a great point because if you go, I guess, 10 years, 10 years, 10 years. So you go back in the 80s and you had Madonna, and
Hmm.
Madonna blew up because of MTV.
Yeah.
And then, take Lady Gaga 10, 12 years ago. You know, it was kind of the start of social media. So somebody says this to me. I mean, yes, Taylor Swift, man, you got to give her her thing. If social media was around then, who knows who would be the biggest
Yeah.
artist?
It's
It's one of those. It's a crapshoot, right?
it's knowing, I mean, and social media, I mean, there is strategy to it and there is like it's a business
Yep.
at the end of the day. Some of us are better at that than others, I think.
Well,
But
it's funny. You'll and I joke about this a lot where you'll do something and you think, you know what, you did a really good interview and it gets 3,000 views and you're going like, what's up? And then some girl burps the alphabet and gets like 18 million views.
Yeah,
And
you
you know
know,
what I mean?
I still hold out hope though in general that like I still think good music is good music and
Yeah.
will find its way where it needs to go. Um, at regardless.
Well, that's a good outlook because it's really easy in this day and age. I think the last stat that I saw was 70,000 new songs a day go up on
Yeah.
streaming platforms. So you have to, you have to take a good, I guess, attitude towards it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a certain level. I think if you want to be in music, or I think in the entertainment industry as a whole, I don't think you can go into it going, I'm gonna make money.
No?
I think if you go into it with that mindset or, in that kind of way, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. When I release music and I release the CP and I'm proud of the CP, it shows I think a lot of growth for me.
Yeah.
But for me, every time I release music, if people listen to it and they love it, awesome. If they don't like it, that's cool too. Thank you for listening. Like I'm not someone who's gonna gatekeep music or gatekeep anything. I'm just releasing my music and people can relate to it how they want to relate to it.
No, no,
That's
and I love that. And I'll tell you, and I have to remind myself, I mean, I'm a guy who I was a drummer playing in a band that was doing a bunch of shows and then COVID hit. Hey, you know what? You got a bit of a personality, you got a voice. I'll do this podcast thing for fun. I never had a goal or an ambition to be a pod.
yeah.
Here I am almost 5 years later. I just got a thing from YouTube from my stats. Like in the last 6 months, I've had 15,000 hours of viewing time.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
so I
awesome.
mean, I have to remind myself that you know, that I'm playing in a space that I'm probably pissing some people off because I didn't go the normal routes. So you do have to temper that.
I mean, is there a normal route though? I mean,
Great
it's
point.
anything in arts, like if it works, it works. Like
Yeah,
there's not a right way to do it. It's just doing it.
love that.
Yeah.
Um, so as most of us know, attention spans on social media are like this. So we're coming up on the end of our chat. But what I would like you to do, if you could,
Yeah.
is tell my viewers where my listeners where they're going to find out about you, where they're going to get your info, music, all that.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram, Jordan Khalaf 1. You can look me up on Spotify. Pretty much anywhere that you stream music, my music's up. It's just my name, Jordan Khalaf. Um, yeah, just check it out. The EP is called The Invisible Man.
The Invisible Man. Love it. And I want to thank you for doing this. Have a good New Year's. I don't know what you're doing tomorrow night.
You as well. I have no idea yet. No plans yet.
Are you able to see that ball drop from anywhere? Are you close to that? Or you?
I mean, I could take the train down and see it, but like honestly, don't
Uh,
really want to deal with the crowds, to
yeah, that'll
be
be
honest.
yeah, way too many people.
Might
I
just
get
pull it
that.
up on the TV,
Yeah, cool.
have some champagne and keep it
Not
keep it simple.
not a bad thing. Thank you for doing this, my friend.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
We're back after this.